Her hair was wet. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. It was 11:48 p.m. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. She had messaged me 2 hours earlier. Still at the office? Don't wait up. And yet, there she was, slipping off her shoes at the door. Jacket damp. Hair soaked. Not from rain, from a shower. And we don't have one at the office. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through my phone, heart pounding like a jackhammer. She walked past me without a word, heading straight to the bedroom. Her phone buzzed. Twice. Then stopped. When I finally stood up and walked in after her, she was already under the blanket, turned to the wall, scrolling. Casual. Too casual. Like this wasn't a glitch in our routine. Like this wasn't the moment I would remember for the rest of my life. Did something happen at work? I asked. She didn't even flinch. Just meetings. Long day. I looked at the floor. A faint smear of water where her jacket had dripped. Her boots weren't muddy. So where had she walked in the rain from? Not from the office. I checked. The office had underground parking. So unless she took a scenic route through a thunderstorm for fun. Buzz. Another message. I asked, was it Wesley again? She paused, but only for half a second. Yeah. He's freaking out about the Vegas event. Wesley. Again. Always Wesley. Tell him to go shower next time, I muttered. What? She asked. I smiled just a little. Nothing. Because this wasn't the time. Not yet. There's a rule I live by. Never confront a liar when you're 80% sure. Wait until you're 110%. Then they can't breathe. And I was at about 92% that night. I spent the next day doing what any self-respecting, quietly spiraling husband does. I opened every cloud backup, every synced calendar, every location history trace I could get my hands on. I'm not proud, but I am thorough. Guess what I found? Wesley had booked a room at the Conifer Hotel downtown at 9:11 p.m. The hotel app sent a confirmation to his company inbox. A shared inbox. An inbox I could access, because Laura once had me help her recover a corrupted PDF from it 6 months ago. I never logged out. The room was for 2 people. And there was a food delivery order from the sushi place Laura hates. But that's not what broke me. It was the review. The hotel allowed guests to leave private comments for management. Wesley wrote, "Please make sure the extra towels are ready. My coworker gets cold easily after showers." That was 110%. That was enough. I waited until the next blow-up happened. The one between them. Oh yes, they had one. And she brought it home. Furious. Red-faced. Vented to me like I was her emotional trash can. He blamed me, she said, for the itinerary delay, in front of the entire board. I just listened. Nodded. Then finally, when she asked why I looked so calm, I said the sentence. The one that shattered the glass house she thought she was hiding in. Did he at least bring enough towels this time? Her face went blank. Then white. Then something else entirely. And that's when everything changed. For exactly 7 seconds after I said it, she didn't move. She didn't blink. It was like someone had unplugged her brain mid-function. Her mouth stayed slightly open, breath stalled halfway out, frozen in that horrible shape people make when they're deciding whether to lie or scream. I stood across from her in the kitchen like nothing had changed, like I hadn't just detonated a live grenade and tossed it at her feet. But inside, I was shaking. My fingers were cold. You think you're ready for the moment the truth cracks open, but you're not. You prepare your facts, your screenshots, your hotel booking receipts, and still, the moment it happens, your body goes somewhere your mind can't follow. When she finally spoke, her voice came out like a dropped glass, sharp and scattered. What are you talking about? I smiled. I shouldn't have smiled. But I did. It was small, contained. The kind of smile you give when you realize you're no longer the stupid one in the room. The towels, I said quietly. From the Conifer. You know, the ones you get cold without after showers. Her face shifted again. She tried to laugh. That awkward, twitchy sort of laugh people use when they're already halfway through an escape plan. You sound insane right now, Curtis. I nodded slowly. Insane enough to check the shared Quora inbox? The one you asked me to help her cover last year? You never logged me out. And just like that, I watched the color leave her skin. People think betrayal is loud, explosive, like a fight scene in a movie. But in real life, it's quiet, hauntingly quiet. The loudest thing in that kitchen was the humming of the fridge and the way her ring clinked against the glass as she picked it up with trembling hands. I didn't sleep with him, she said suddenly. I hadn't asked. Not yet. But now I knew. She sat down across from me, slowly, like her legs had lost their understanding of gravity. Curtis, listen. It wasn't about God. It wasn't what you think. I stared at her. The woman I married. The woman who once cried when I read her a poem I wrote in a broken Target notebook. The woman who used to make 2 coffees in the morning, hers with cinnamon, mine with too much milk. I couldn't find that woman in this version sitting in front of me. All I saw was a story unraveling too fast to control. I told you everything about me, I said, almost to myself. Even the embarrassing stuff. Even the things I didn't want anyone to know. And you gave your wet hair and your cold towels to a guy named Wesley, who still wears AirPods when he talks to people in person. She flinched. That was low. But I was bleeding, and bleeding people aren't gentle. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached out and touched my hand. Please, she whispered. Please don't tell anyone. That's when I realized something even worse than the affair. She wasn't sorry. She was just scared. Not of losing me, but of losing the image she'd built. The nice girl. The loyal wife. The high-functioning professional who makes spreadsheets and brings lemon bars to team outings. I'm not going to destroy your life, Laura, I said. And I meant it. But I was going to find out why. Because there was something she wasn't saying. Something behind the panic in her eyes. The fight with Wesley, the sudden shift in loyalty, the wet hair, the silence, the reaching. There was more. And I wasn't stopping until I found it. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made toast. That's what she did. She walked into the kitchen, barefoot, in that faded hoodie she always wore when she wanted to pretend things were normal, and she made 2 slices of toast. Jam on one, butter on the other. Like we were just another married couple trying to beat the clock before the workday. Like she hadn't just begged me not to tell anyone that she'd betrayed me with a man who needed extra towels and corporate silence. I sat there, watching her scrape the butter across the bread like it was a sacred ritual, and I thought, this is how people lose their minds. Not with screaming. Not with broken dishes or dramatic exits. But with toast. She didn't say good morning. She didn't ask how I slept. She just slid the plate across the table like a peace offering neither of us had earned. Are we going to talk about last night? I asked. She paused, fingers still resting on the butter knife. I thought you said you weren't going to destroy my life. I said I wasn't going to destroy it, I replied. I didn't say I'd help you keep it spotless. That got her attention. She looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like months, I saw something crack behind her eyes. Not guilt, not sadness, but calculation. Like she was shifting pieces around in her head, trying to find a version of the story that would keep her from losing more than she already had. You really want to talk? She asked. Fine, let's talk. I didn't expect what came next. She stood up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out an old laptop bag. The gray one she used to bring to the library when we first started dating. She unzipped it slowly, like she was afraid something inside might bite her. Then she pulled out a folder. A thin, plastic folder, the kind you buy in bulk at office supply stores. Inside were 6 printed emails. She laid them out on the table, one by one. Each one was from Wesley. Each one was not what I expected. They weren't romantic. They weren't flirty. They were threatening. One of them said, if you tank this Vegas event, it's your job. Don't think I won't tell HR about your emotional instability. Another said, don't forget who covered for you during the Q1 data leak. If I go down, you go first. My stomach twisted. I looked up at her, stunned. He has something on you, I said. She nodded. He's had it for months. Since February. What does he have? Her voice lowered to almost a whisper. I don't know if I can tell you that. Why not? Because I'm not sure who's protecting who anymore. I leaned back in my chair, blinking through the fog that was suddenly taking over my brain. Everything I thought I understood was crumbling at the edges. The hotel, the towels, the wet hair. Now this, emails that sounded like blackmail. Accusations. Leverage. You made it sound like you chose him, I said slowly. Like you had feelings. I thought if I acted like I did, she said, eyes trembling, he'd stop threatening to blow everything up. And the hotel? Her jaw clenched. He made the reservation. I was supposed to show up and smooth things over. I didn't. I swear I didn't go. That's why I came home wet. I walked for 2 miles in the rain because I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. The silence that followed was heavy. Not comforting. Not forgiving. Just heavy. So you were going to lie to me. I said. About all of it. Yes. And now? Now I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. I believed her, but I didn't know if I cared anymore. Because here's the thing about trust. When it shatters, it doesn't break clean. It splinters into thousands of microscopic pieces, and even if you want to fix it, you never really get all of it back. I stared at the emails again, at the cruel, manipulative language from a man I'd never even met. And I realized something. This wasn't just a marriage problem anymore. This was something bigger. And if I was going to figure out what really happened between them, I needed to meet Wesley myself. I didn't ask for her permission. I didn't even tell her. The next morning, I found Wesley's LinkedIn profile, clicked on the Contact Info tab, and emailed him using a burner address I created 5 minutes prior. I signed the message as someone from an industry blog, Tech Connect Now, and told him we were running a short Q&A with mid-level executives in the event planning space. I figured the kind of man who threatens coworkers and reserves hotel rooms under company cards wouldn't be able to resist the chance to talk about himself in a public spotlight. He replied within 23 minutes. Said he'd love to meet for a quick lunch. Always happy to give back to the community, he wrote. I almost laughed. I picked a neutral location, small Italian place downtown, nothing flashy, and told him I'd be there at noon sharp. He agreed without hesitation. I didn't tell Laura. I couldn't risk her warning him. I couldn't risk anything. I needed to see this man face to face. When I got there, he was already seated, tapping away on his phone. He looked exactly how I imagined. Tan, overconfident, gelled hair that had clearly been styled in a gym mirror. He stood when he saw me, offered a firm handshake, and said, "You're from that podcast thing, right?" I nodded. "Sure am." We sat, ordered drinks. I didn't touch mine. He started talking immediately, like he was delivering a pre-recorded monologue. He told me about vision, about team management, about scaling experiences across demographics. He didn't ask what the article was about. He didn't care. I let him run for about 8 minutes before I leaned forward and said, "So what's it like blackmailing your coworkers into hotel rooms?" He froze. Not a dramatic, theatrical freeze. It was more subtle than that. His eyes shifted. His breathing changed. His hands, which had been gesturing wildly a moment before, suddenly folded neatly in front of him. His entire body recalibrated like a machine that had just detected a threat. "I'm sorry," he said, voice flat now. "What did you say?" "You heard me," I replied. "Emails. Threats. Towel requests. Want me to keep going?" He looked at me like he was trying to scan my face for weakness. "You're her husband." "I am." He leaned back in his chair, smirked. "You know, I always figured she'd crack and tell you eventually. She never was very good at carrying weight." "She carried your mess for months," I said. "Seems like she was better at it than you." He laughed. Actually laughed. Not nervously, arrogantly. "You think you understand this, but you don't. Your wife was one HR email away from losing her job in February. She screwed up a compliance report. I cleaned it up. That gave me leverage. That's business." "That's extortion," I said. "No," he replied calmly. "It's insurance." She knew the rules. She played the game. My hands were trembling under the table. Not from fear. From something worse. Hatred. Hatred so specific it felt like a second pulse behind my ribs. This wasn't just a sleazeball. This was a predator with a spreadsheet. A man who wrapped poison in corporate lingo and used people like pins on a chessboard. "You think she's innocent?" he asked me suddenly, cutting into my thoughts. "What? Your wife?" he said, tilting his head. "You really think she didn't enjoy the power she had for a while? The perks? The access? She's not the victim you think she is." That landed harder than it should have. Because deep down, I didn't know anymore. Was she a victim who got in too deep? Or a willing player until it got too risky? Was her fear real? Or just regret that the game had changed? I stood up without touching my food. Wesley raised his glass and smiled. "She'll come back to work soon enough," he said casually. "People like her always do." I left without a word. The walk back to my car was a blur. My ears were ringing. My heart felt like it was pumping gasoline instead of blood. I had what I came for, confirmation. Proof that Wesley had been pulling strings, twisting fear into obedience. But I also left with something worse. Doubt. Because what if he wasn't lying? What if Laura had played along? What if I'd built my entire pain on the wrong story? I had one move left, and it meant doing something I promised myself I never would. I was going to read her old messages. The ones she thought were deleted. There are lines you think you'll never cross. And then there are nights when you realize those lines were just suggestions written in chalk. I waited until she was asleep. Not the light kind of sleep where you toss and mumble and turn over every few minutes, but the heavy, motionless kind. Mouth slightly open, arm dangling off the bed, her breath slow and even like waves brushing against the dock. I watched her for a full minute. I don't know why. Part of me wanted her to wake up. Stop me. Give me an excuse to go back to being the man who respected boundaries. But she didn't stir. So I walked to her desk, pulled out the laptop, and opened the shell of our shared life. She deleted everything. Emails, messages, documents. Cleaned out like a crime scene scrubbed of fingerprints. But what she didn't know, what most people forget, is that deletion isn't destruction. It's just hiding. And I knew how to look where she didn't. I dug into the archives, into cloud sync services she probably forgot were even connected. I accessed her cache data through a recovery tool I installed on our home network months ago when I was fixing her backup system. I told her it was for safety. That part wasn't a lie. It took less than 15 minutes to find them. Over 80 messages between her and Wesley. Some work-related, most not, and none of them were what I expected. There were no heart emojis. No I miss yous. No selfies or voice notes. But there was something else. Something worse. Coordination. Strategy. Damage control. You need to delete the Slack thread before Monday. Legal is sniffing. The calendar invite needs to be removed. Use your personal Gmail to send the update. Don't worry about Curtis. If he asks, say it was for optics. You didn't have a choice. That last one broke me in a very specific way. You didn't have a choice. He was coaching her. Manipulating her like a campaign manager shaping a candidate. Every move rehearsed. Every word preloaded. And all of it was about me. About hiding from me. About building a version of reality where I'd be just confused enough to stay quiet. But she had responded. And her responses told a different story. I can't keep lying to him. It's not working. I'm not built for this. He's not stupid, Wesley. He already suspects. This is going to ruin me. I've already ruined him. I sat back, hand covering my mouth, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to claw its way out. She was scared. She was cornered. And yet, still lying. Even in the fear, even in the self-pity, she never once said the word I needed to see. I'm sorry. She feared consequences. She feared exposure. But not once did she fear losing me. That's what finally cracked the last piece of me in half. I closed the laptop slowly, carefully, like it was a bomb I had just disarmed. Then I went back to the bedroom and stood there, watching her sleep in our bed, under the blanket I picked out 2 winters ago because she said she liked the color forest green. She looked peaceful, safe, and all I could think about was how a person can look so honest while living a double life inches away from your own. In that moment, I realized something brutal. She didn't protect Wesley to save him. She protected him because she knew once I knew the truth, she'd lose both of us. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her again. Not yet. I was going to talk to the one person she never thought I'd reach. The compliance officer at her company. Because now I had the receipts. And I was ready to burn the building down, professionally. People think revenge feels like fire. Explosive. Satisfying. The kind of emotion that burns through your chest and leaves behind clean ash. But I'll tell you the truth, it doesn't feel like fire. It feels like paperwork. Cold, methodical, boring paperwork. I spent the next morning building a file. Not a dramatic, Hollywood-style dossier full of red string and grainy photos, but a quiet, polite folder titled Professional Concern. It had a PDF of the email thread from Wesley, screenshots of the threatening messages Laura had archived, timestamps, calendar cross-references, and metadata analysis. I even included a spreadsheet, not because it added anything meaningful, but because I knew corporate people trust anything inside a spreadsheet. I sent it anonymously. There was a contact listed on Coworker's ethics page. For all compliance violations or inappropriate employee conduct, please contact Carla M., Director of Risk Management. So I did. No signature. Just the facts. I knew they'd trace it eventually. But that was part of the plan. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I came home to silence. No sounds from the kitchen. No laptop clicking in the living room. No casual hums or off-key singing from the shower. Just silence. Laura was sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at the carpet, her hands clenched like she was trying to wring water out of them. They opened an investigation, she said without looking at me. I sat down across from her. Good, I said. Her eyes snapped up. Red. Bloodshot. Angry, but not the kind of anger you get from betrayal. It was the anger of someone who's been exposed and resents it more than the crime itself. They know it was you, she snapped. Does it matter? Yes, it matters, Curtis. You went behind my back. You went to my job. You tried to ruin me. You ruined you, I said calmly. I just CC'd the right department. She stood up, pacing. Wesley's been put on leave. They're scrubbing his accounts. HR wants to talk to me again tomorrow. And guess what? If they find that I went along with any of it, even under pressure, I'm liable too. You think they're going to play favorites? I stared at her. Did you? Did I what? Go along with it. She stopped. And in that moment of stillness, I saw the truth more clearly than any document or data trail ever could. Yes, she did. Not just once. Not by accident. Not under duress. But strategically. To survive. To maintain power. To avoid consequences. Maybe it started with fear. Maybe it even felt like necessity. But eventually it became habit. Do you want me to lie to them? I asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. I want you to protect me. You already asked me that once, I said. Back when you said, please don't tell anyone. Remember? And you still lied to my face after that. She walked to the window, pressed her forehead to the glass. It was raining again, of course. In this story, it always rains. You're not doing this because you care about justice, she said. You're doing this because you want to hurt me. That stung, because part of me wondered if she was right. I'm doing this, I replied, because I want the truth to matter to someone. She laughed, a short, hollow sound. You think this is truth? You think this is the clean, heroic thing to do? You're not a whistleblower, Curtis. You're just a bitter man who got cheated on by a woman he didn't know how to keep. There it was. The shot. The final bullet she'd been holding back for weeks. Maybe months. And for once, I didn't flinch. Maybe, I said. But at least I don't need hotel towels to feel powerful. Her eyes closed slowly, like she was trying not to exist in her own body anymore. I'm going to pack a bag, she said after a pause. Stay with my sister for a while. I nodded. She didn't ask me to stop her. And I didn't. As she walked down the hall, I thought about everything that had happened. The emails. The lies. The confrontation with Wesley. The whispering apologies that never came. The hair, still wet that night. How such a small thing, moisture on a collar, had unraveled years of constructed reality. And even as I watched her leave, one question remained. What else don't I know? Because if this was the lie she got caught in, how many more went undetected? It started with a call I wasn't supposed to receive. 3 days after Laura left, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. No name. Just a voice. Female, maybe mid-30s, speaking fast, clearly nervous. I don't know who else to contact. If this is Curtis, please check the archived file labeled Q1 Overflow, internal only. It's not about your wife. It's bigger. Just be careful. I shouldn't even be calling. Click. That was it. No number to trace back. No explanation. Just the kind of cryptic tip that makes your stomach twist, because now it's not about one man, one woman, or one marriage. It's about something much deeper, and apparently, someone doesn't want it found. At first, I thought it might be fake. A prank. A wrong number. But then I remembered something. Laura had once mentioned overflow folders on the company's internal server, the ones used when files were too large or too sensitive to go through Slack or Gmail. They were technically supposed to be wiped every quarter for compliance reasons, but anyone who's worked in corporate knows how that really goes. No one deletes anything. They just bury it under other junk. And I still had access. Because of one shared document she forgot to unsync. The login took a minute. The internal directory was sluggish, bloated with PDFs and template decks. But eventually, I found the folder. It was buried under 6 layers of project titles and meeting agendas, like a digital coffin with corporate branding. Q1 Overflow, internal only. Inside were 9 files. 7 were standard reports. 1 was a billing dispute. The last was a video file. It had no label, just a string of numbers and the word FOIR in all caps. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the trackpad for a moment. Then I double-clicked. The footage opened with shaky audio. Office chatter in the background. Someone had recorded it from a corner security feed, time-stamped 11:41 p.m. 2 months ago. I recognized the hallway. It was the executive floor of Coworker's HQ. Empty, dimly lit. And then Wesley appeared on screen, followed by Lara. They weren't fighting. They weren't flirting. They were arguing. Quietly, but intensely. Wesley grabbed her wrist. She yanked it away. He said something that made her step back. Then he looked over his shoulder, reached into his pocket, and disabled the hallway camera by unplugging something at the base of the wall. But the camera didn't fully cut out. It glitched, skipped a few seconds, but didn't go black. And what happened next didn't match any of the stories I'd been told. Because in those missing seconds, a third person walked into the frame. A man I'd never seen before. Tall, older, security badge clipped to his belt. His name was on the door that slammed shut behind him. R. Holloway, Data Integrity. And then, suddenly, Wesley and Lara both stopped arguing. All three of them entered Holloway's office. The door closed. The footage ended. No exit. No return. No explanation. The next file in the folder was a scanned document, heavily redacted, flagged as internal audit freeze. Holloway Son F incident. It mentioned server discrepancies, deleted backups, and something called Project Briar, which I'd never heard of. Lara's name appeared once, in a list of people with temporary override access. And just like that, my personal nightmare became something bigger. Corporate fraud? Whistleblowing? Cover-up? I didn't know. But what I did know was this. Lara hadn't just been protecting herself from a scandal. She'd been protecting someone else's secret, one big enough that a midnight meeting ended with camera tampering and missing footage. I sat back, dizzy. Everything up until this point had been a domestic disaster. Infidelity, manipulation, emotional fallout. But now, this was something else. I grabbed my phone, opened my email, and typed one line. We need to talk. Now. It's not just about Wesley anymore. I hit send. To Lara. Because whatever she thought she was hiding from me, it just became a matter of survival. We met in a park. Neutral ground. Broad daylight. I picked the place, a public garden Lara used to love back when things were simpler. She arrived late, as expected. No makeup. Hair tied back. Dressed in that same gray hoodie she used to wear when we'd walk this place together on Sundays, back before everything unraveled. Her face looked different. Not older, just stripped. Like someone who had finally stopped pretending to be bulletproof. She sat beside me on the bench without saying a word. The air was still. You could hear the wind rustling the vines in the trellis overhead, the quiet hum of bees working through the sunflowers. I watched the video, I said. Her breath hitched. You were there. With Wesley. And Holloway. She nodded slowly, not denying it. It wasn't supposed to go that way. What was it? She stared straight ahead. A cleanup job. Holloway found inconsistencies in a data pool tied to vendor payments. Wesley thought he could smooth it over with a few changed timestamps. Holloway refused to play along. The meeting was supposed to be a negotiation. And what did you do? I told Holloway I wanted out. I turned to face her. Did you? Her eyes met mine, tired, but unflinching. I did. That night. But I didn't leave. I kept working on other projects. I buried it. I thought if I stayed invisible, it would go away. That's what got you caught, I said, trying not to be seen. She laughed, quietly, bitterly. You were always better at seeing me than I was. We sat in silence for a long time. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't cruel either. Finally, she turned and said, They suspended me yesterday. Not fired. But I'm under review. They might still involve legal, depending on what Holloway says. And Wesley? Gone. Resigned before they could fire him. Took a settlement to keep quiet. Classic. And what about us? She looked down at her hands, fiddled with the hem of her sleeve. I don't expect anything. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. I just wanted you to know I'm not hiding anymore. I stood up. Not to storm away. Not to deliver some dramatic monologue. Just to breathe. To stretch. To look at the sun breaking through the glass walls of the greenhouse, scattering light across the path like shattered gold. You know, I said, I thought this would end with me ruining your life. She flinched. But it didn't, I added. Because I finally realized that's not justice. That's just a slower kind of self-destruction. I turned back to her. I'm letting this go. Her eyes filled instantly. Why? Because the version of me that needed revenge doesn't exist anymore. She stood up slowly, unsure, cautious, like the air around us was fragile. So this is goodbye? She asked. No, I said. This is release. We didn't hug. We didn't cry in each other's arms. We just stood there, two people who had burned everything down and somehow, inexplicably, found something human in the ashes. She left first. I stayed a little longer. Walked through the greenhouse. Watched a monarch land on a broken stem and somehow make it look graceful. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I could breathe without wondering who was lying to me. Later that week, I deleted the backup folder. All of it. And I finally bought a new toothbrush. Blue. Not because it reminded me of her, but because it didn't.